Paul, your new book is mostly built on insights from your relatively new company called Immersion that uses smartwatches and fitness devices to measure activity that you then turn into actionable business data. Now, my interest in this topic goes back to 2015 when Apple first introduced their watch. Around that time, I introduced a slide in most of my presentations that was titled The Future of Neuromarketing, and it had a picture of the Apple Watch because I felt that sooner or later, these devices would be tools for neuromarketers. And so I'm pleased that you are bringing that to pass. But at the same time, I've got a late model Samsung smartwatch, a very nice device, works pretty well as far as I can see for tracking exercise and such, giving me good heart rate measurements and distance and so on. But at the same time, I can also do sleep measurements on it, but there it's not so good. I can be sometimes working quietly at my desk or even sitting playing a rather immersive game like Call of Duty. And later on, I'll look and see that it's logged me as having slept during that period. And that it's kind of annoying that it can't figure out that I'm actually working or typing or even slaughtering digital enemies. And I'm curious, if Samsung, this giant consumer electronics company, has difficulty figuring out when I'm sleeping, how is it that you guys can derive insights from those same devices?
It's a really good question. So let's take it slowly. So in my academic lab, we started asking a question, which was, if we gave people a message or an experience, would they take an action, a costly action? Donate to charity, email your congressperson, post on social media. So we, as you know, we always start with looking at changes in neurochemicals. And we thought oxytocin might be part of this story. And so we would do these blood draws before and after, and then pay people because we're torturing them. And some people responded, some people didn't. And then as we started publishing this research, we were approached by DARPA, which is the Defense Department's research arm. And they say, hey, we would like to be more effective communicators or train soldiers to be more effective communicators to reduce conflict, right? As opposed to be putting a gun to your head, hey, where are the bad guys? Like, could I tell you a story? Could I create an environment? And so, frankly, we had millions of dollars of taxpayer money, and we started measuring areas in the brain that had high densities of these signals that we saw in blood, these neurochemical signals, that is where the receptors lived, and measured about 140 signals simultaneously, both in the brain and the peripheral nervous system. And for the military, we had to have something that was deployable, right? So fMRI wasn't going to work. We did a lot of high-density EEG work, but EEG is really, really sensitive. And so eventually we did a mapping from the brain to the peripheral nervous system. So what we found is that the cranial nerves, which is like the output file of the brain, that's a nice network effect. We're measuring at the level of the brain itself. Those are disaggregated signals. And so once we found these key signals, in particular for dopamine binding to the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with attention, and with oxytocin release, which is associated with what I call emotional resonance. I'm going to use one bad word. One of our subscribers called that the give a shit measure. But emotionally, I have to give a shit about this. I have to actually care about it to motivate me to take an action. So again, the military wanted a prediction engine, and that's what we built. Now, it turned out these cranial nerves innervate your heart and your gut. Now, they have very subtle effects in the downstream effects of dopamine and oxytocin. So the effects we're picking up from the smartwatch, again, it's a dumb device. It's smart, algorithms in the cloud, are these third and fourth order effects on the very subtle changes in the rhythms of the heart. So having said all that, we eventually, 2018, late 2017, built a platform so that we could democratize neuroscience, take this core measure, which I've called Immersion, which I believe captures the value that the brain assigns to an experience with social content. And the more immersed you are in the experience, the more the brain goes, oh, this is really important to me. And then that sticks in the brain. So as you know, Roger, highly emotional experiences are saved in the brain in a very particular way. So I think of this as a little nagging, your sweet mother in your brain, Roger, remember this thing that we just saw. And I think that's why we're able to take these electrical signals that we then have convolved mathematically to maximize predictive accuracy. So immersion does not exist in nature. We've done unnatural things to natural data to maximize prediction. So we can predict things like sales bumps from advertising and purchases from people in stores with the 85+% accuracy. So happy to talk about some of those applications. And so the punchline is that we want to not have you talk to me. I'm a weirdo. You know me, right? Weird PhD people. And neuroscience, traditionally was too expensive, too slow, and really not optimized to predict outcomes, but just to predict what the brain was doing. So we did the opposite. We're like, okay, let's start with prediction and just work backwards and see if we can identify the signals that tell us what people will do, not what they feel, not what they intend.